I'm Lior Phillips, host of This Must Be the Gig. We're a weekly podcast that documents everything about the world of live music, speaking with choreographers, costume and set designers, the people who run beloved venues and festivals, and, of course, speaking with musicians about that one gig that changed their lives. Get your peek behind the curtain at consequenceofsound.net, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org. Consequence of Sound and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making your way here, checking out our series. If this is your type of thing, catching up with all of your favorite artist interviews, hopefully you'll hit that subscribe button so we'll be able to send 3 interviews to you every single week. A brand new interview every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you like to get your podcasts from. Just type in Kyle Meredith with, hit subscribe so you can keep up with all of your favorite artists, what they're up to, discover some new ones, know what's happening in the music world. I'm Kyle Meredith, and today I'm going to be talking with the Front Bottoms. They've got a brand new record called In Sickness and in Flames. It is a monster of an album that I'm in love with. We recorded this interview right before they were to do some drive-in shows. So, of course, I want to hear about what the prep was like going into that, as well as the recent ukulele versions of some of the tracks that they had just done, with proceeds going to the Black Lives Matter organizations. And then we get into the record itself. In Sickness and in Flames, they talk about getting older and having the ability to laugh at yourself, the need for a song to change along with the listener and how they're interpreting it, taking things back to basics as far as their sounds and how they kind of go into a recording on a record like this, and the continuing story of their lives within the songs. And in fact, they'll talk about having resolution in hindsight. And then into the singles themselves, I want to talk a lot about Montgomery Forever, not only because it's one of the songs on the album, but because it's actually referenced later on in another track as well. And within that, they'll talk about how they love leaving those little Easter eggs all throughout a record. And it's because of that I kind of want to wonder, is a rock opera in their future? We'll be asking that as well. So let's get into this. The record is called In Sickness and in Flames. It's Kyle Meredith with the Front Bottoms.
Hey, man.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great to see you both. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on outside of the record because as everyone's trying to be very creative right now, you guys have found ways to do that. And as I read, I think the most exciting thing is these drive-in shows, right?
I think so, yeah, definitely.
So how's this going to work? I mean, and how do you prepare for something like this exactly?
Yeah, I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, honestly. It's like we just got to get through the shows, you know? I feel like that's kind of, with everything at this point in, like, the history of the world and stuff, it's sort of like, all right, just let's get through it, you know? Because I try to, like, pump myself up and talk about it and stuff, but then I'm like, oh, I just got to go play the show, you know? Yeah. Got to do it first. So we're sort of in the same boat as everybody else, I think. Yeah. We're just kind of waiting to see what happens, but...
I just bought, like, a nice pair of, like, FM lawn cutting guys so that I could tune in and listen to us play as we're up there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that could mess you up or, be the perfect.
I'll be like super delayed.
Right. The echo is just a little bit off. And I think that is the part of the whole question for everybody right now is to what extent do you try to interact? I mean, obviously, most artists, 99% of artists are not doing the club thing or whatever.
Except for like Smash Mouth.
Right. It's, the occasional. I mean, was this just like, did you guys feel like we need to get in front of an audience and this seems to be the only way?
Well, we were doing the thing on Twitch. Like every Friday, we would go on Twitch, play a few songs and make a few jokes or whatever. And then this opportunity actually kind of came to us and we were like, it sounds safe enough. Like you can't leave your car, 4 people per car, it's spaced out. So we're like, yeah, we'll give it a shot.
Yeah. And you got proceeds going to local charities. Is that right?
We always kind of usually do like something. Yeah.
Yeah. We usually funnel off one stream of revenue to go to something that's, positive.
Well, that's awesome. I know that was sort of also part of the story lately is you guys raised $10,000 for Black Lives Matter. And that was that started with like ukulele versions, right, of these new songs?
Yeah, we did. You know, just kind of like you were saying before, it's like at a point where, you know, the music and going on tour was like such a lifestyle. So now that that's sort of stopped, you know, it all goes back to just trying to be creative. So that was we thought, okay, well, we have this music, let's try to do a different version of it, and then we could raise some money for a good cause. So it's really just about kind of staying creative, and that's where that came from. I thought that came out awesome too. You know, it's like every time you do something like that, it really is an experiment. You know, you're just kind of trying to make art and, you know, make it positive. So when it does feel positive on the other side, you know, when it's all over and done with, it's very exciting. It's very lucky. So
yeah, I mean, ukulele, it's also not far from doing like an acoustic version of a song or whatever. What was it? Was it difficult at all to sort of break down, you know, how to make it still a piece of art for you on a, you know, something like that?
not really. I mean, for me personally, it's just like, you know, another experience that you're gonna go in and just try to make, you know, add your own little flavor to it, but keep it cool. So that's kind of the mindset you go in with, and sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. I thought I enjoyed that experience. So I thought it was.
Well, big compliments on this new record with In Sickness and Inflamed. There's a lot happening here, and I won't paint this like this is everything is great little record, because there are obviously moments throughout it where that is not the case. But there does seem to be a positivity being painted here in a time where positivity can sometimes seem out of place. So I would ask, like, where does that come from on this record?
I think that's kind of always been our aesthetic, you know, kind of like laughing at it all, sort of, you know. My mindset with a lot of this record was, you know, we're getting older now, so we're learning and we're trying to, like, you know, mature just as individuals and as artists. And, you know, I think that was just kind of that's always kind of been our vibe, like, you know, with even songs in the past, like Lyrically, it is kind of like, you know, laughing at yourself sort of a vibe. And I think also the reason I start making a song with Matt, the reason why we do start making music is to have some sort of sense of satisfaction, which, like, in itself is very positive. So I think that's why the vibe is what it is, because when we start making the music, it's coming from a place of, like, not frustration, but there's like
tension,
a release. There's a tension there. And then as the process continues and gets closer to the end, you sort of achieve the sort of satisfaction that you were looking for when you started it all. So then that kind of the vibe goes to that, like, sort of positive energy, even though you're singing about maybe something that's frustrating or a negative thing. Just by singing about it, it's kind of becomes a positive thing. And I guess that's what art is, but I think that's kind of always been our aesthetic, to kind of, you know, be tense and have that frustration, but then also have the release of, like, okay, like, deep breath. So, and I think that definitely felt like the vibe within Sickness and Inflamed, for sure. Like, all the songs and stuff are sort of coming from this kind of, like, tense place, like, artistically. And then, as always, through the process of creating, we were able to, like, you know, you just kind of able to smile a little bit, and that gets put into the process.
I mean, do you, like, even lyrically, do you find that you have to make sure that you don't let the darkness get too dark or whatever? Because again, you know, most artists, you know, especially, you know, in the last handful of years, grappling with how do I reflect what I'm seeing in the world, you know, through my own lens. I mean, there comes a point where that can be overwhelming. I mean, I know personally that can be overwhelming, and I hear from a lot of other people too. But so when you're writing the songs, do you have to make sure, like, this can't be that dark? Like, you have to mentally make that choice to go the other way?
I don't know.
Maybe in some senses, where it's like switch up one word to make it less.
Yeah. Like, you don't want to be too devastating. Like, you know, you don't want to bum people out. I think an example was an older song. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example on a newer record. Anyway, we had released a single. I think it was a single called "End of the Summer." I think it was last year. Is that right? And there's a line in it that says, like, you know, something about, like, how I deserve it and you deserve it too. And it was like, when I had sing it, I remember, like, really kind of feeling like, ooh, that feels like kind of dark, you know, like, I deserve this, but also you deserve this too, you know? And everybody kind of agreed, like, ooh, that's a little bit intense, you know, even though it wasn't, like, the most, you know, it was nothing graphic or anything, but Like, that's the type of energy that I feel like, you know, you're trying to get to, you know, you're trying to hit that point of like, ooh, how does this feel? You know? So I think it's more about just going for it, like, and like trying to hit that wall or hit that darkness and then taking it back if you need to. I mean, like, we have the song Father from back in the day that was like about hitting my dad with a bat, you know? So, and people would come up to get, you know, back to kind of what you were saying first. It's like people would come up to me and say, oh my God, that's the funniest song I've ever heard in my life. And then some people would say, you know, that song makes me cry. So like that energy of how some people are like laughing about it and some people are crying about it. Like that's kind of what we always try to achieve, like emotionally, which is a confusing emotion, you know, it's confusing. So.
Well, it adds nice layers. I mean, even to just one specific song. I mean, you know, as a fan of music, you want to latch onto a song and then continue to get something out of it time and time again. I mean, I think that's what I hope for.
And I think it changes. It allows it, like there's a power like in the mystery, you know, and because we've always kind of held on to that, the listener is able to. The song is theirs, you know. I feel like it doesn't have anything to do with us once people hear the song. And you know, I want you to listen to a song and then love it, and then if you come back to it 5 years later and it makes you laugh instead of cry, it's like that's the ultimate goal. That's, you know, for the art itself to change.
I guess you do.
Yeah, like as the person does. That's a very that's art, baby.
Yeah. How does this pick up from story-wise, I guess I should say, how does this pick up from the last record with Going Gray? Because, you know, as people wrote about it, there was a lot of, you know, looking back at that, you know, checking the passage of time. Where does this record find you further along that? Like, what's the next step after that?
I mean, I think this record for us was like clearing the space out and like going back to like, it's Brian and I. And like that's how we should approach everything with this record going forward. Kind of like getting it back to us and taking control again, and then went from there.
I think refreshing it, like, you know, that's kind of always like with each new record, you just try to refresh. You know, it's kind of like a reaction to whatever you did before. So, you know, and it is fucked up. Like our lives, like me and Matt, this is everything for us. Like I totally identify as like a member of the Front Bottoms, you know, so that's like my entire life. So it is kind of hard, like when it's like, when I'm older, I will look back at like each album and be able to put myself in the years that I was making that album. So that's like a very important thing for me as well, like in terms of catalog of music. You know, I'm trying to build, like we're trying to build a catalog of music that, you know, can sort of tell a story. And I think really, I don't know how like the story is going to end. Like lots of times things just work out. Like, you know, I think of like even just the names of the album, like Back on Top and all the other names I can't remember right now.
Okay.
But it is like, yeah, Going Gray. It's like, it does feel like, you know, I got gray hairs now. We both got gray hairs. So that was like what Going Gray literally was like from our lives. Like, okay, now we're going gray. And then In Sickness and in Flames was I got married this past year, and, you know, just crazy stuff, like in the world with where it's at now. So I think that it's just kind of like, it really is a life of its own. And like when it's over, that's how we'll know in hindsight. I'm learning that in hindsight is when you really are able to figure everything out, I guess, obviously. And like with the art as well, like I can look back and be like, holy shit, like that's what that meant, you know, or like kind of reflect on it and be like, oh, that's why we did that. It all makes sense now. So I think that that's not only with like our personal lives, but with the art, it's like very much how we try to approach it. Just like naturally let it develop to wherever it is.
It was nice too, because this record we started demoing, like we would just go away to like a cabin somewhere. One time we flew out to California for 2 weeks. Just kind of like drove up and down the coast and just like made some music, which ended up being like maybe one of the songs that's on the record, but it was still like a nice relaxing process of it all.
When it was some of these songs, obviously, as you're saying, there's enough room for interpretation for that idea to grow, to have something to look back on. There are other moments on the song that seem on the album that seem very, very specific, and you know, I'll bring up the latest single with Montgomery Forever, because that seems like something that's very specific, like you know, the travel log of life. First off, what Montgomery are we talking about here?
Well, like I said, it's up to the listener. But that, for me, that was a street in Jersey City, like I think it was housing development, like in Jersey City on Montgomery, that they demolished. I think they built condos or something. But so we went and watched them like blow up the building. It was like really early in the morning, and it was totally surreal. Like, I did not know what to expect, but I think I started to cry because it was like so loud. And then this insane massive structure was like gone within seconds. And like the dust, it was just like a totally kind of feeling that stayed with me. And then as we were leaving, there was a woman with a shirt on that said Montgomery Forever. And that's kind of like when I was like, oh shit, like this was like, these were people's homes, like this, like a family histories and stuff. And I was like, oh, so all those emotions, whatever that is, like that's where the experience came from. And that's what kind of, when we made the song, that's where the lyrics came from, at least, like used to live here, now they're blowing it up, and then, stuff like that. And then for verses, kind of cherry pick, I have like a bunch of demos, and we'll see what kind of vibe and the energy fits it, and then just kind of go from there. So things are like a little bit disconnected, but because it's all in the same song, you can kind of find like your own sort of narrative with it. So
right, because that's and for me, that's exactly what I did.
Awesome.
Because there are those things, as we're talking, I think weaving in and out through this interview about how things change in your life, and some of those you just can't control. Some of those are just taken from you, and
right.
when I hear that song, it's kind of one of those, like, here's a childhood home. Here's where all of my memories are. Right. It wasn't me that walked away. It was, that's
awesome.
That's an interesting way to come from that anyway.
Totally.
And that comes back up. I mean, again, it must have been somewhat of an important little idea, because we hear Montgomery Forever again shouted in leaf piles.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, me and Matt have always tried to do like the Easter egg thing and put, just layer upon layer upon layer. And a lot of that stuff happens, and like we were just saying, like we don't even realize it until like 2 years later. We're like, holy shit, like look at this. Look at how perfect this worked out,
A perfect example like that, something we didn't even know, is like in Montgomery, the bridge, that wearing a mask, you can still see my face.
Yeah,
is that Montgomery?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's...
Oh, no, that's a different one.
That's another new song. But it was just like,
yeah,
here's everyone, or I am the virus.
Yeah,
that's Montgomery. I'm the virus.
Right.
Just like, why the hell are we writing about viruses?
Yeah.
We didn't know that this shit's coming.
And like wearing a mask, but you can still see my face. Like there's like lyrics that when you look back, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. But suddenly, like, that's what this record becomes eventually in hindsight. Like, this is the pandemic record. You didn't mean it to be that way. Again, this is something out of your control. But, as you look back, there's going to be some kind of context that's what it's put in. Like, oh, this is the one we released during the pandemic, and
exactly. And, I think that's why because like everybody, when the pandemic and everything was going on and is still going on, I lost my mind. Like it was a very weird scenario. Just, everybody had those feelings, but, with all the tours we canceled and everything like that, it was just like, wow, okay, like just to go back to what you said, like you have no control and it could always get worse. That was kind of always my vibe. And, I had my appendix taken out and I had to cancel a few shows like maybe 3 months before the pandemic. And then, like I said, I got married. So In Sickness and in Flames meant something totally, totally different. And now it's like, holy shit. Like we were actually talking about the world. Like, even though we were trying to make it about us, now, like all the other records, it doesn't really have anything to do with us. It's pretty crazy how that works out.
I also love how it's all tied together, because, between the songs, obviously you get a lot of these moments and everything. Are we hearing mostly studio chatter? Is that what's happening?
Some of it is like voice memos, a lot of voice memo stuff. I'm always kind of recording like on my phone, like when I'm having a conversation. I know Matt does that a lot too. So just about kind of going back and being like, oh, that makes sense. That's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, I had like a nice like chime bell recording on my phone that I was like, oh, this could fit in there.
Yeah.
So we stuck that in one.
And I think there was definitely a conscious effort to like make it one flowing thing. It felt kind of appropriate to do that with this album, like just kind of with the flow of it. So we knew before we even made the songs, that was kind of the structure we wanted to just kind of continue one song all the way through. So with that in mind, you're kind of able to plan ahead and like, oh, I'm going to record on my voice memo, and then think 2 months later, like, oh, I have this, you know, the birds in my backyard chirping, right, whatever, you know. So it's, and like, that's the art of it, you know, and that's really the fun part. Like for me personally is like the in-betweens of the songs, and like the interludes are very important, because that's like kind of what makes it for me.
Yeah, I love hearing that. When you do that, how close does this come when you're putting those pieces together to being a concept record or trying to tell, you know, a story over an arc? I mean, is that part of the desire at all?
You know, it's not part of the desire, but it does work out like that, like without us even really kind of wanting that control. It kind of just makes it more of a story and more of a like a beginning and a middle and an end. So I do like that. Not that I do it intentionally. I'd be lying if I said that I was intentionally trying to do it, but you know, I think it's amazing that it works out sometimes. So I do appreciate that.
See, I think you guys, I mean, just hearing the songs, you know, knowing the songs that I've heard through the years and everything, like the great Front Bottoms rock opera, it doesn't seem like that would be far off at this point.
I like that. Yeah, that might be what we're doing next, you know?
Well, guys, I so enjoy this record. Seriously, it was one of my favorite lists. I mean, right from when Camouflage came out, you knew something special. This record is something special, and I've loved everything that's come out of it so far.
Thank you so much, man. It really is, like, you know, the more I think about it, and like how I said at the beginning, like having the realization at this point in my life, like, holy shit, this is like who I am, you know, like this is my life's work. And I know you probably feel the same way, right? Like, this is our entire life's work. So when you say like, oh,
you're the first person to tell us that.
Yeah, like really, really appreciate that, for real.
Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk about it too. Looking forward to hearing how these drive-in concerts turn out. You know, it's the wave of the future right now, at least the wave of the present. So
we're on the forefront.
All right, guys, take care. Stay healthy out there. Be safe. We'll see you soon.
You too, man.
Likewise.
My thanks to the Front Bottoms, the new record In Sickness and in Flames. Thanks to you as well for checking out this episode. Before you get out, I do hope you'll hit the subscribe button. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you like to get your podcast from. Hit that subscribe button. We'll bring you brand new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Then after that, head to WFPK.org, where I do a show Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern. That's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews. Again, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence of Sound has your music and film news. You can find me on the social media spots as well. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of them at Kyle Meredith. And that does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org, from Louisville Public Media.